Welcome to the InShape Fitness Show. I'm Coach Kim. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is called Why Do People Exercise Once or Twice a Week? You know, you're probably one of these people. Almost every single person I've worked with in my company has been around since 1997 in New York City, training clients either privately in their homes, in gyms, or in their companies. And the bottom line is, and we know this statistically, most people actually don't exercise at all, but the people that do exercise tend to go once or twice a week. Now, we're going to answer that question a little bit more and how we got to that point. But, just think about this. People don't choose to be overweight. This is a lifestyle condition that has developed over the last several generations in the United States of America and some other Western countries, but we only talk about the United States of America. People don't choose to have to sit at work all day long. Most people don't choose to be sitting on their butts at their desk all day long. The United States lives with one of the highest, actually the highest cost of healthcare in the world, coupled with some of the worst health outcomes in the world. And that issue is broader than any one person's gym schedule, but it's worth taking a look at how we can move beyond the number of times someone goes to the gym and counting calories to reach a more sustainable level of health, to have a conversation about what a sustainable level of health is and how to get there without that cumbersome idea of leaving, the life that you're living and sort of detaching from your family, detaching from your work and anything that you're doing that's fun, and having to drop everything, go to a gym, and then work out for an hour and then leave the gym and go back to your life. It's not sustainable. On many levels, it's not sustainable. And so we're going to talk a little bit about all of that, coupled with we're going to do a postural systems check first, which we're getting ready to do now. And then I'm going to guide you through 5 exercises that I love that you need no equipment to carry out in your home, or maybe in your office, in your conference room at the office. So let's start with the postural systems check, because it's a great way to begin listening to any podcast. Obviously, if you're listening to this one, then hopefully you're focused on health. You're focused on thinking about good things that you can do for your body. One of the main things that you can do for your body is to deeply breathe and collect information, open up that feedback loop, turn it on and open it up and let your body and your brain get in touch with each other. And I'm not in a soulful way, and this is not a spiritual thing. It's not really even all that meditative, but it does take a good, just a couple of deep breaths for your body to sort of get a sense for where it is in space. I talk more sciencey stuff in terms of, the meditative component and the spirituality of practices such as yoga and other Eastern forms of health that I just don't really go to for most of the work that I do with our clients at InShape Fitness. But the science part of it, there is significant evidence that shows how taking a few moments to deeply breathe, inhale through your nose. I'll talk a little bit about why that is once we start moving, but deeply inhale through your nose and then bellow carbon dioxide. That air that comes out of your body is filled with carbon dioxide, a gas that we don't use. You remember from 8th grade science, plants take in carbon dioxide and then exert oxygenated air into the atmosphere. We in turn take in air with oxygen, and then we exhale out the carbon dioxide. So you want to make sure that you're doing that, and then you want to think about where all of your body parts in space are. That's proprioception. Proprioception is your ability to recognize where all of your parts are in space relative to their anatomically neutral position. And because of our sedentary lifestyles, because we are seated for most of the day, your natural posture is slowly but surely shifting into these deviated positions that actually cause harm to the body in terms of your ability to move. So, for example, your head. Now your head is on top of your neck, which is on top of your shoulders, and so on. The spine, sort of reaches into the bottom part of your skull and is supported by this really cool engineered complex structure of tendons and ligaments and muscles that make your spindly neck able to support the heavy head that sits on it. And the head is heavy. It's a 10, 11 pound piece of equipment that I know. I talk to people and see people with medicine balls working them with equipment sometimes in gyms, and holding a 10 pound ball is not an easy feat for even people that are pretty strong. But your support structure on your neck has to do that all day long. Now, coupled with, so that's the heaviness of your big brain as a human being, and then the thinness of your neck. So the ability for your neck to hold your head in the right place is really critical. But what our lifestyles have been forcing the deviation or sort of subjecting us to deviations is regarding the very thing that I'm doing right now. So I'm consciously pushing my head back because I'm trying to speak into a microphone and I'm sitting in front of a computer, and therefore my neck cranes forward a little bit. And your neck is probably doing the same thing. If you are looking down at an internet connected device, a phone or an iPad, if you are driving a car and holding a steering wheel, sometimes you'll see people with their heads craned forward towards the windshield a little bit. Your head is not then sitting on top of your neck properly. And what happens as a result of that deviation is that you're collapsing muscles that line the front of your neck. There are other really important anatomical features of your neck that require strength of those muscles and the connectivity of the soft tissues, things like your larynx and your esophagus, and your voice box and your digestive system is there down your throat. Just that in general, the front part of your face and all of the fluidity that's required for you to breathe well, for you to drink and eat well. And then your thyroid gland is tucked in there in your neck. So you want to make sure that your head is back so you're supporting your neck, and it also helps prevent range issues and tension in the back of your neck, where you probably, if you get a massage, actually anybody that sort of walks the earth, if you're an adult, can benefit from someone giving them a nice little casual massage along the back of the neck, because those muscles at the top of the back in your neck are often quite tight. And that, again, is because of our sedentary lifestyle. So remember, your ears and your shoulders line up, and you want your head to act as your ballast, your body's ballast. It stabilizes your center of gravity. The last thing about the neck craning that I'll talk about, and then I'm going to move down the rest of your body quickly, is the fact that when your head is moved forward, especially if you're used to doing that with your head, if you're used to craning forward, and then you carry your head with you. Obviously, you don't carry it with your hands, but you don't pick it up and carry it. But your body, if you stand up from your seated position where you're sort of craning your neck to look at a screen or look at a device, and you begin to walk with that same deviated posture, or run or bicycle, your center of gravity is shifting, and therefore your potential for falls, your potential for gait imbalances and gait deviations that can cause harm to your ability to ambulate, your ability to move, to pivot from one leg to the next, is affected. So the position of your head is really, really critical. Now your shoulders are back. As I said before, your chest is open, right? When your shoulders are back, you have full range through the chest muscles. But again, try not to think of exercise just as muscles, because what's also really important about keeping your shoulders back is that you're opening up your lung capacity. Your chest cavity, once it's open, is able to inhale more completely and exhale more completely. You activate the diaphragm and you allow that exchange of air and carbon dioxide in and out of your body in a more productive, more efficient way. It's really important to make sure that your shoulders are back. As you're standing, and if you're sitting, you should stand up right now and just think about the position of your butt and your pelvis, because yet another reason that it's important to not sit all day has to do with the position of the pelvis and the instability that's caused by something called lordosis, which is when your butt sticks out a little bit, which is a forward tilt of your pelvis. It contracts the lower back muscles, which don't want to be contracted but are, because that's the way you sit. And then it also tightens, causes a strain on your hip flexors and some of the muscles in the front of your leg and the front of your core. So those are conditions that relate to sitting, the seated position as well. And when you are doing your postural systems check, you can tilt forward and tuck your tailbone in, and tilt forward and tuck your tailbone in, sort of go from the extremes so that you can find your neutral. You can put your hands on your bony protrusions, the hips, right there at your waist, below your waist, to kind of get a sense for where your pelvis is. Last thing is to just make sure that you're using your feet properly. Left foot, right foot. So make sure that both feet are absorbing the same amount of body weight if you can. And then think about the position of your feet. You don't want your toes to turn out. You don't want to press to the inside of your foot or the outside of your foot, but rather use all four corners of your feet. Okay, now, that was probably the longest postural systems check I've ever done. But I want to talk a little bit about the recommendation about adults exercising a couple of times a week, because I find this really, really fascinating. If you have been listening to my podcasts over the years and maybe hearing about me talk, still haven't gotten this book ready to be published yet, but Darwin on the Treadmill is a book draft that I am trying to get published right now. And it is about the history of fitness, some of the chronicles of recreation and exercise habits that started, that really are from the beginning of time, but that have really diverged since the Industrial Revolution, since the end of World War II. In the early 20th century, in fact, most people, and again, I'm just talking about the United States, most people were trim. Not necessarily bathing suit body trim with shredded abs and ripped arms and tight butts, etc. But people were not overweight like we are now. It is really important to swallow that heavy pill. It's taken us just 3-4 generations. That's it. For us to go from a healthy country to a country where you are more likely to be overweight or obese as an adult than you are to have a healthy body composition. It is so scary to think about that we have just since our great-grandparents, have we gone from a healthy working class, yes, hard-working culture, to one that is totally overeating and not moving enough, and therefore having to cope with and manage the lifestyle limitations and health-related conditions that are a part of almost every single person's life. You have to take medications, you have pain, you have difficulty with basic activities, and my company's whole business is based around the notion of sustainable exercise lifestyles. And so we can talk a lot about counting calories and about the number of times that people exercise, or how frequently they exercise, how hard they exercise, HIIT workouts, weight workouts, flexibility workouts, all that stuff. But the bottom line is that just a couple of generations ago, people didn't have enough money to go out to eat all the time. They didn't, feel a slight sense of hunger and just stop in and grab snacks or whatever at the local deli or 7-Eleven. They didn't exercise either, per se. They didn't go to the gym all the time. They did the things that needed to be done in their homes. They walked around their communities. They gardened. They traveled on foot. They cooked their own meals. as the United States emerged from World War II, and the technological revolution began to take place, this shift was happening. More and more families were moving away from cities into the suburbs, and therefore they were driving more. They stopped moving, therefore, on their feet. They hired out for help with kids and other household activities like cleaning and laundry, etc. Now, these are all important things, and I wouldn't necessarily change any of those things, but it's really important that we recognize that this culturally has been our trajectory, and we've got to put an end to it. We really have to put an end to it, because the way that we're going right now is so not sustainable. We are running into a brick wall super fast at Mach speed, and we're going to end up destroying the potential of future generations to understand how to be healthy without these burdens placed on them to take medications for everything and to buy their way into a healthy life, because you don't need to. All right, I want to do an exercise right now, because I love talking about this, and I could talk about it all day, but I really want to make sure that you have some resources that you can go to that just will help you do a few things in the morning and or breaking up your day so that you can do a little bit of movement. You can engage your body in a little bit of stimulation to ward off that, and I'm still going to get to it, I promise, that reason that some of the reasons that the doctor said, oh yeah, let's go to, you want to exercise 2 or 3 times a week. I like to quote Michael Pollan sometimes. I don't talk very much about food, and I certainly won't today, but Michael Pollan wrote a really great book called In Defense of Food, and one of the things that he focuses on is how political food policy is. And I would say the same thing about health and exercise. The politics of the food lobby. Why, for example, back in the 50s, there was a sort of a blowback against some dietary habits of people regarding meat consumption, and why the meat lobby fought that, and then how the FDA came out with new recommendations because of the meat lobby. And it's happening now actually with the dairy lobby. We're getting more and more policy recommendations that come out that relate to things just based on the power, the money, and the power that's behind big agricultural companies and industries lobbying our federal government for the kinds of things, the kinds of oversight and policies that benefit their companies, their industries. It's not about the individual person, so you have to make your own choices. And exercise is very similar to that. Going to the gym a couple of times a week is something that has been used widely. The number of minutes of exercise per week is now actually becoming a little more prevalent. And then there's this other fun thing that I'm going to talk about in a second regarding 10,000 steps, which I also find very amusing. But again, I want to get you through one exercise, which I find to be super fun. And for this exercise, what I want you to do is get down on your hands and knees if you can. Hopefully you can. Even if you're in your office, there's always a place to get down on your hands and knees for a little bit of exercise. And you can do a couple of cat camels while you're getting down there, or once you're there. Limber up the spine a little bit by curving your spine into the scared cat, dropping your head like a bowling ball, and taking a couple of deep breaths, then inverting the spine to a contraction of the lower back and the extension of your front tummy muscles, your front rib cage muscles. So that's the cat and the camel. And the exercise now is actually something that we call a mountain hiker, not a mountain climber, but something that is very slow moving. I'm not big into you're being at work, even you're being at home, maybe getting ready to go to work, and depending on whether you shower at night or shower in the morning, this is not a regimen where you would need to take a shower afterwards. You might elevate your heart rate a little bit. In fact, that's why we're doing these moves now so that your heart is stimulated. Remember, the heart is a muscle. It's February. It's actually Heart Health Month. The heart muscle requires stimulation. So if you're never elevating your heart rate through your day, you're not providing that piece of equipment with the stimulation that it needs to continue working without medications from birth to death. You need to think about that. Your heart rate should be elevated every single day. Every day. So lift your knees up off the floor. You're sustained on your now on your feet and on your hands. If you cannot do that, you can stay on your knees and actually do this, but you want to bring one knee to the elbow by lifting the foot up off the floor. So the left knee comes toward the left elbow, and then it returns to the starting position, and then the right knee comes to the right elbow. You can do underneath the body, sort of lifting the torso as you bring the knee in to the elbow straight, or you can sort of extend around to the side, squeezing those oblique side tummy muscles as you're bringing the knee around to the elbow to the side. Either way, for about 30 seconds, you're almost finished, actually, if you've been doing it since I started, or since I started describing it. So let's go for 10 more seconds here. 30 seconds gets your heart rate up. Go for 60 seconds and keep your heart rate up for that 30-second interval where your heart rate is elevated and you sustain that movement pattern. Then we're going to drop from the mountain climbers onto your elbows, and I want you to hold a plank for 30 seconds. So go ahead and do that now. So mountain climbers into plank, mountain climbers into plank, mountain climbers into plank. Now, if there is nothing else you think about, you can remember those two exercises. And it's just two exercises. And it doesn't even have to be 30 seconds. If your heart rate elevates after 20 seconds, go back and forth for 20 seconds. But just going down to the plank on your elbows, then back up onto your hands for the mountain climbers. Down to your elbows to hold a stable plank, keeping your butt down. And then back up onto your hands for the mountain hikers. I called them climbers a second ago. I'm sorry. But just those two moves. Make them a duet. Keep them going. Continue that pattern of one after the other for 2 or 3 minutes, and your energy level, your metabolism, obviously, and you're obviously doing a lot of really great things in terms of cardiac health and in terms of the fluid transport, the cellular respiration and fluid transport, exchange of nutrients and oxygenated blood at every point in your body, because you have woken up the body and stimulated it. Do you know that you probably know this from, again, back to like high school science. You've got all these capillaries. You've got the big arteries and veins and ventricles. You've got lots of sort of mid-level ones that run down your major limbs in your arms and in your fingers. And then the individual cells are all connected via the capillary structure, which is the very web-like structure of your blood, of your circulatory system. So these are the tiny little tributaries of vascular exchange that take place at every cellular tissue point in your body. So trillions upon trillions of these things, and they are empty little tubes unless they are needed. So they're not like, it's not like a faucet I guess maybe it is like a faucet where you have to turn it on for the water to come out. I'm thinking about sort of on the cuff here about the analogy, the metaphor, the analogy that I can use. But it sort of is like that, because the water out of your faucet doesn't come out unless you turn it on. Same with blood in your capillaries, the exchange of nutrients at your fingertips and in your toes. None of that is working unless you're moving. You have to turn this stuff on in order for the biochemistry to benefit you. All right, so that was 2 exercises now, the mountain hiker and the plank. I want to do 3 more. We're going to turn over and do an exercise on your back in just a minute, but you can keep doing the plank and the mountain climbers while I talk about the 10,000 steps, and then we're going to turn over for a hip bridge. I like talking about the 10,000 steps because it has to do with the Olympics, and I am a huge fan, even though was never an athlete. I actually didn't grow up playing any sports. I was the sort of geeky student council person in high school and in college, Model United Nations, that kind of stuff. And then when I moved to New York City, that's when I became more interested in a sedentary lifestyle. In fact, the beginning of my book writes about how my boyfriend in high school totally thought that he predicted that I was going to end up kind of doughy and not fat necessarily, but not fit after I married and had a family, etc. Which I, of course, have proved him wrong on that score. But the Olympics were always really interesting to me, and I did a lot of studying of Olympic athletes when I wrote my book, Darwin on the Treadmill. But the one thing that I found really, really fascinating is this notion. We've got these fit, sort of module applications on our phones, and then these wearable bracelets that track calories and steps. And the 10,000 step per day is something that has developed over the last few years, which is fascinating because I found some statistics on a website at the National Institute for Health that shows that sedentary adults only walk about 1,000 to 3,000 steps per day, which is basically, getting up out of your car and going to your office, going from your desk back to your car, walking from your car back to your house, maybe to the market, and that's it. So the idea for 10,000 steps per day came out, as it turns out, from the Tokyo Olympics in 1964. And it was interesting because they actually represented a bunch of firsts. They were the first model Olympics to be held in Asia. They were the first to be broadcast via satellite, and this was important, they were the first to be broadcast in color. Now, the government in Japan was dealing with something that they thought was not so great, which was this visible lifestyle change that they were enduring after World War II as well as the United States. Their waistlines were expanding. They were working more in offices, and they were moving around less. So they were trying to figure out how to prepare their country for all of this attention. And there was a man, he was a Japanese watchmaker, a man named Yamasa Tokei, who noticed this change, and we don't really know all that much about him personally, but what we do know is that he invented a pedometer that he called the Mampoke, which a literal translation is 10,000 step measure. So let's walk 10,000 steps a day became part of the mantra leading up to the 1964 Olympics. Similar to, kind of our apple a day keeps the doctor away. The Japanese, it's said, still say that walking 10,000 steps a day is part of their daily regimen. So if you're not walking 10,000 steps a day, I would garner to add that walking 10,000 steps a day isn't really quite enough if your heart rate is also still not elevating. So if you're walking, laissez walking is something I call it, or you're just sort of shuffling your feet, you're not necessarily doing the work as it's intended. You need to move around and stimulate your entire body for 10,000 steps a day. That means that you do need to elevate your heart, maybe not for all 10,000 steps, but get yourself moving at a clip that does force your heart to elevate more than your sort of resting heartbeat does. Okay, let's do those hip bridges. So in your hip bridge, that's perfect. You're lying flat on your back and your hands are beside your body. You are bending your knees and your feet are flat on the floor. Now, when you lift your body up into a bridge, you lift your hips up, and once you're in that high position, you make sure that your ankles and your knees are making a straight line up and down, a vertical line, right? So if your ankles are too far away from your knees or too far away from your butt, you need to line your feet up properly, and then make sure that your toes don't turn outwards. You want your toes and heels to line up as well. And you want to keep your toes down because that helps keep the pressure distributed along the entire foot. And if you lift your toes up, you end up inadvertently concentrating the effort in your quadriceps, your thighs, as well as your lower back. By pressing down with your toes, you distribute that effort to the back of the leg, your butt, and your hamstrings as well. All right, so you can lower down and lift up, and lower down and lift up. Hip bridges are part of my everyday regimen, and sometimes I do them with both feet. Sometimes I lift one leg up and just do them with one leg. Lots and lots and lots of variations for hip bridge, and you should try them all, but make sure that you do them because your hip flexors are really, really important exercise, really, really important muscles in your body that because you're seated for a large part of your day, those hip flexors are not in their natural position. They're contracted, they're shortened, and they can get stuck. They do get sort of, I don't want to say dried out, but they're less malleable. They're less able to extend and flex with their full range of motion when they're constantly in this contracted, tightened position. Okay, let's do another exercise. Why don't you stand up on your feet and let's do a balance exercise. The exercise now that I'm talking about is so easy that I have my 91-year-old client do this exercise almost every day as well. It is called the lighthouse, and all that you're going to do is stagger your feet. You can even start with your feet right next to each other. Extend your arms up and out, palms down. So your arms are at shoulder level. They will get heavy, right? Each of your arms weighs 5 to 7 pounds. So, you can generally feel that effort after 20, 30 seconds maybe. But hold them out there. And then the exercise itself for the lighthouse is just turning your head slowly all the way to the right and then all the way to the left. Now, if your feet are together and you have decent balance, you want to stagger your feet into a heel to toe position. Okay, so that means that you are discombobulating your inner ear equilibrium as you turn your head to the right and to the left. You might feel just a little off balance, but what is happening here is that all of those small muscles that line the bottom of your legs and your feet, you're really activating those. In fact, sometimes it's almost the case where you can feel energy sort of leaving your core and running down your legs and entering, like sort of feeling a little bit of heat drive up into your calves and your shins and your feet because you're having to stabilize your body. Now, if you're staggering your feet, you want to switch your feet and do both sides. But the lighthouse is an exercise that I really do enjoy having everyone do in some way. There are other variations where you lift up one leg completely off the floor. You can do this exercise while you're in a lunge, and that also, it lowers your center of gravity, but you're still balancing with your feet in a really strangely staggered position, and therefore your vestibular system is still being stimulated quite nicely. So that is the lighthouse. The last exercise that I'm going to do, and then I'm going to let you go, is an exercise on your feet. And the exercise I'm going to have you do on your feet is a simple squat with the variation that includes an activation of the side of your body. So it's a squat that we call a sumo. And the sumo squat is where you sit down and back into an imaginary chair, right? Or if you have to sit into an actual chair, that's fine. Maybe you figure out how you can sit into an actual chair and then lift up and then lift your leg out to the side, because that's the sumo part of it. As you're coming up out of your squat, you elevate the left leg out to the side. It's not a kick. It's just a lift to the side, and then go back into the second squat. So it's sort of a fluid motion where you're coming down as you lift up. One leg is lifted out to the side, and then you go right back into the next squat. And as you come up the next time, you alternate with the left and right legs. That side motion part of it is specific to the need that our bodies have in terms of interacting with other dimensions of our existence. So we tend to be very unidimensional in our lives these days. Even people that exercise have this problem. People I work with for marathon training have a significant issue with some of the side movement because everything that they do involves running forward or biking forward or walking forward. There isn't a lot of, just sitting down and standing up. There isn't a lot of movement that interacts with the things that are going on right next to you, to your right next to you, to your left, and around towards the back of you, turning around to the back of you. So our vestibular systems are really critical in terms of later in life being able to withstand falls. But as we're able to do exercise, maintaining that level of fitness in the side of the body is really good because those are the support muscles that really do need to help maintain the lifestyles that we want to live. So I'm Coach Kim from In Shape Fitness. This has been a longer podcast, but I really appreciate your sticking with me. If you have any questions about the number of times that you should be exercising every week, please let me know. But try to do it in your home every day in the morning, and then have fun with your life the rest of the time. Don't sit and watch TV and do, play video games. Get outside. Go have some fun with your kids. Kick around a soccer ball. Train for a marathon if you want that bucket list item checked off. Go skiing. Go hiking. Do things that are fun outside. And I promise you, you won't need that gym membership anymore. Have a great day.